Visual symbols play an important role in the Bible, the history of the church, and in our culture. But the church has wrestled with the inclusion of such symbols. Due to the limited amount of time I have, I will not be able to address everything that I have researched on this topic. In the next few minutes, I hope to give you an overview of the situation, a few biblical symbols, and a strategy for the recovery and inclusion of visual symbols in the worship space. The Catholic and Orthodox branches of the church tend to use a variety of symbols. Some denominations within the Protestant church also use a variety of symbols, such as the Lutheran and the Anglican. However, Protestant free churches tend to use very few symbols. These churches tend to have bare walls and resemble entertainment spaces. This is a picture of Willow Creek Community Church, which is a Protestant free church, as I mentioned, and you can see the entertainment space look-alike. This kind of worship space is designed to be seeker-sensitive. However, it has some serious unintended consequences of this kind of worship space. First of all, our culture uses visuals. In our homes, we put on the walls images of people, places, experiences, and things that we value, love, and find beautiful. In contrast, if the church has no visuals, what does that communicate? Gail Remshaw says this: if we see no images, we doubt the presence of a human community of thought and value. So the lack of visuals can actually communicate a lack of values and a lack of community. The entertainment space can also communicate something very serious. It can communicate that the congregation is here to consume something, and that the worship service is about them receiving something instead of them giving worship to God. So what are some examples of the biblical symbolism? I will only be able to explore a couple in this presentation because of the time. So I'd like to start with the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant is a physical object and space in which the presence of God resided. This was both a symbol of God's presence with his people and a symbol of the promise that he gave to them. Something that I find particularly interesting is that in Exodus chapter 25, God instructed his people to build the Ark of the Covenant with images of angels on the top of it. 5 chapters earlier, he told his people not to have idols. In our culture, we tend to equate images with idols. But I find it very interesting, through the symbol of the Ark of the Covenant, that God does not equate image with idols, because he instructs his people to put those images of angels on the ark. The second symbol I would like to explore is the primary symbol in the Bible, the incarnation. God became flesh. He became physical and visual. He became human. Christ is not only our ideal to live up to, but also a symbol of what our life will look like as a follower of him. We are told that we will be persecuted for our beliefs, like Christ. We are called to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, like Christ. We are called to love our neighbors, like Christ. And like Christ, when we die, we will rise again. So, how do we incorporate symbols into the worship space? There are several things to take into consideration. The first thing is knowing the congregation. Like I mentioned earlier, different congregations have different uses for visual symbols. Some use many, others use very few, some use only a cross. So, when we're trying to incorporate visual symbols into the worship space, it is best to start with what they already know. The second thing to consider is explanation. People generally struggle with things that they don't understand. It is difficult to interact and appreciate something that you don't understand, so explaining the meaning behind a symbol gives the congregation the ability to interact with the symbol. For example, we see here a bunch of symbols, but I would like to focus on the 2 candles. These 2 candles on the Eucharist table symbolize that Jesus was both fully man and fully God. During the Eucharist, this can remind the congregation of the significance of what they are partaking of. However, without that explanation, they're just 2 candles. They may provide a nice aesthetic, but without that explanation, that significance is not conveyed. A third thing to take into consideration is context. When we introduce a new symbol into the worship space, it should be given an appropriate context, such as season, the message theme, or the congregational situation. Without the proper context, the symbol has no purpose. The symbol must have a purpose in the worship space for a congregation to know when it is appropriate to interact with that symbol and to use it. Another thing to take into consideration is time. Change is a process, and that process is often slow. So when we are introducing new symbols into the worship space, it is probably best to take it one at a time. Also, consider the time that has passed. Symbols have layers and layers of meaning that have developed over time. And so, as time continues to pass, these meanings change, and they develop new meanings, and new symbols arise. Robin Margaret Jensen puts it like this: when what one person means, and what another sees are bound to be different, and this variance only increases with time and distance. On the topic of new symbols, George Guyver says, symbolism can evolve out of something that was not a symbol to begin with. So as we see, as symbols are changing and developing within the church, a call to explanation, re-explanation, is important as the church progresses through their use of symbols. A final thing to keep in mind as we include symbols in the worship space is variety. Having a variety of symbols allows people in different situations to interact with symbols. For example, the sacrificial lamb and the sun are both symbols for Jesus, meaning two very different things. The sacrificial lamb is a symbol of Jesus as a victim of violence, persecution, and taking our place, whereas the sun is a symbol of Jesus and his triumph of good over evil. A person in a situation where they are the victim of violence or persecution may find the sacrificial lamb a much more meaningful symbol for Jesus than the sun, where a person who is on a figurative mountaintop may find the sun a much more meaningful symbol. Everyone is going to find different symbols meaningful, and not everyone is going to find every symbol meaningful. Having a variety of symbols can allow everyone in the congregation to find a symbol that they find meaningful. Having a variety of symbols also fosters an understanding and appreciation for different visual symbols. As we push our congregations to grow in their ability to understand and interact with visual symbols, having a variety of visual symbols will stretch that ability. In conclusion, visual symbols have a place in the Bible, in the church history, and in our lives. And if used well, they have the potential to add so much to the worship space and the worship service. By following this strategy, the church will find meaning and value in including visual symbols in the worship space.
Well, I'll start with the easy question. Well, first statement. When Christina set up, would you go back on your slide for a moment just to show? I love this background. When we're talking about symbols, the symbolic rays of God coming down, that's really nice, just so you know. One of my questions for you is, did you come up with your list of strategies?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, I did.
And no source helped you with that?
I think my research as a whole did. No one source.
Okay. Which one of these sources that you have listed then was the most substantive in your research?
Probably where this one right here, Guyver, was probably very helpful for this presentation in particular.
Why?
So he provided an explanation of sign versus symbol and really went into depth over the uses of symbols and how symbols have been used, a little bit of the history and how we could use them better.
Thank you.
During this, the research and everything, was there a symbol that you found you didn't know before but you did after and it was very meaningful to you?
I would probably say the sun that we explored earlier. I mean, I knew it was a symbol, but I guess I didn't really understand the meaning behind it or really dig into depth for it. But that was really powerful. As like, you know, the sun rises in the morning, and it's a picture of Jesus' triumph of good over evil, and it's just a reminder every day.
Christina, do you find it incongruous at all that some of the free church traditions that you were looking at, that when it comes to worship space, they say, oh no, we can't do that, you know, that'll confuse people, they don't know what those mean. And yet they live in a culture, in neighborhoods, where they are surrounded by some little arches that are yellow. Even my 3-year-old knew that meant French fries. I mean, so, you know, did you find that odd? That when we're outside the church, we totally get it, but when we're inside the church, all of a sudden we pretend we don't?
Yes, that's actually something that I examined in my paper under the realm of seeker sensitivity, is we have visual symbols in our culture, and we're already interacting with them in our culture. So would it not make sense that we would have them in the church building as well?
And it still takes catechesis, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you didn't know when you saw that squish, right? Maybe you didn't know the first time, but you did very quickly after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you always associated with that, right? So, I don't know. I think we're more clever than we think.
Or are we,
Imagine.
as a Protestant, protesting what was taking place, going anti-symbol because we identified that with what we protested against? And now we want to go bearing. I remember being in a church that was just like a big shed. And it was like that was more spiritual than anything with symbols. I wonder, you know, Puritans, you know, we don't have theater because that was bad then. So I wonder, does the protesting of Protestants fit in there somewhere? Yeah. I have one more question. You came up with the term entertainment space. That sounds pejorative, so is that your term? Did somebody else come up with that?
I guess that's the term that I used to generalize it. It wasn't a term that I don't think I took that term from any of my sources. No.
You know, I would view that setup more as a presentational space, that
Okay.
going from the front out to the group as opposed to we're worshiping together. Which, you know, and the lights are dimmed over the congregation. They say, take out your Bible and you can't read it if you wanted to because it's dark out there, like in the theater. Yeah, so, or chapel, we didn't say that. So, just interesting, entertainment space as opposed to presentation space, like the Roman Catholic. I see where people would argue the terminology there, thinking you're attacking as opposed to describing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I meant to say resemble an entertainment space.
Oh,
and I
that
don't
still
think
wouldn't work,
I-
it's still, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Mhm.
but you have the thrust stage,
Exactly,
right?
you do.
have the proscenium arch, or
So
at least the
maybe
symbol of it.
supporting that term then
Okay.
would help make it more substantial.
All right.
This is fine. Yeah,
Chip.
Chip?
So, did your research come across anything with like inaccurate portrayals? So, like some churches used to have pictures of Jesus, and he was this white male with long flowing hair. When some, and I've heard some churches who actually thought Jesus, and they were convinced that Jesus had a crew cut. Did your research come up with things dealing with that kind of like pictures hanging or?
No, my research has been primarily on visual symbols. I've done some research on icons as well, but that's a very different kind of art. That doesn't have the it's not attempting to realistically portray Christ. So I haven't really done research on realistic portrayals of Christ.
Thank you, Christina. We need to move on to our next speaker.